911, what are you reporting?
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm really confused. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence, and he was dead when she hit the ground. I didn't see any cars. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence.
What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was?
It was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Sasquatch Odyssey. Thank you guys so much for being with us for the show. It is Friday. I hope you guys have had a great week. We've got a great guest lined up as always, but I want to start by inviting you. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. You can get me at brian@sasquatchodyssey.net. You can go over and check out the premium content section of the website and become a member there. We've added a donate button if you guys want to click that and help support the show as well. As I said, we've got a great guest lined up on the show. We've got John coming to us from California. He's had some amazing experiences out there with Sasquatch. He's had some experiences with seeing lights in the sky. He's had UFO experiences. He actually had so much to tell us that we're actually going to have to do a two-part series with John and bring him back for another show to just concentrate on the UFO encounters. So he's on the line. He's ready to go. You guys sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I want to welcome John to the show. John comes to us from California. Welcome to the show, man.
How you doing today?
Absolutely fabulous, man. So I really appreciate you taking time to come on the show. I know you had multiple encounters with Sasquatch, so why don't you just sort of go right into that first encounter? Tell us where you were, what you were doing, and what happened out there, man.
Alrighty. Well, my first encounter was in 2015 in August when I was 20 years old. I took a backpacking trip to the Emigrant Wilderness in the Stanislaus National Forest. And the place that I camped was a few miles from the Kennedy Meadows Resort. And this is my first time actually being in a forest. I've gone to parks and hiked all the time, but never actually in a big place like this. So I have a big backpack with plenty of supplies. I got food. I had 2 firearms with me, and I set up camp just across from a river. It was between I forget the name of the river, but it was between a horse trail and the river, about only a few hundred yards from the actual border of the Emigrant Wilderness. I could tell because the border signs were there, and within the first about hour of me getting to the place where I set my campsite up, I heard the first noise, which was just a pretty classic howl, and I couldn't really believe that I heard a sound that quick. So I set up a little shelter, which was pretty much just a few sticks and a tarp over it for me to sleep under, because the weather was really nice. I didn't really need anything too warm. So the first couple nights, it was I would hear howling after all the locals went to sleep, because they would have little parties at the turn of the river, and after they went to sleep, they would basically come down the mountain. I would hear them like a few thousand yards, then it would be about 500 yards, and then after it got to a few hundred yards, everything would go quiet, and I'd hear footsteps approaching my campsite. And the first few nights, they would just they were pretty quiet. They would just walk around, and I was scared the whole time, obviously. After the first few days, they started coming, and I started hearing very, very clear vocalizations. There was a male and a female, and you could easily differentiate the tones of voice from the male and the female. And they would have entire conversations, I'm guessing about me. I couldn't understand, obviously, what they were saying, but I could get a feel for the energy and how the conversation was going. And from what I got from it, the female was interested in me, and I'd say, like, trying to tell the male that I wasn't that much of a threat and to basically let me stay. But the male was a little more apprehensive about it, and he was kind of arguing with her. I could tell from his tone that it wasn't particularly angry, but it was more defensive. And they would go on for a while. I think it'd be important to say now my mindset and the energy I was bringing into the forest. I was 20 years old at the time, and I was in a pretty bad headspace. I had some unresolved issues from my childhood that kind of impacted my decision making and just how I treated people. And I was just in a really bad spot, and I was sad. And I basically ended up leaving my girlfriend at the time to go to the woods. And I didn't really plan on coming back, but I feel these beings have some kind of telepathic ability, because they could sense my energy. And after the first few days, I started to strongly regret leaving my girlfriend at the time, and I had thoughts of going back only after the first few days. So I would cry, and when I would cry, I would scream at the top of my lungs as hard as I could, and I didn't really care if I died, honestly, because I knew these things were around. I didn't really know. I didn't have any first-hand experience before that. So I think the female could feel my energy and feel the anguish and sorrow and sadness, and she kind of felt bad for me. And the male was a little less sensitive to it. So after the first few days, I realized that if they were gonna harm me, they probably would have done it. Also, I wasn't religious. My family wasn't religious at all, or spiritual. Neither my mom or my dad. But my grandma on my dad's side was extremely religious. And when I was 17, after I talked to her on the phone one day, I had an out-of-body experience, and that was my first out-of-body experience I had, where I went to a different level of consciousness. I think she was praying for me. Anyway, I had brought a pocket Bible with me for no particular reason. It was a Gideon's version of the New Testament, and that was the only book I brought. And as you know, if you're in the woods for a long time, books are a really good thing to have, as you get pretty bored fast. So I started reading the Bible, and the more I read it, the more things stuck out to me, and I was able to relate to more than I thought. So after I finished the Bible, which didn't take too long, I was sitting, and with all my heart and all my might and everything I had in me, told Jesus Christ I give my life to him. And at that exact moment, my spirit blasted off into a different, higher level of consciousness, and it was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt in my entire life. So that being said, that kind of changed things, and there was definitely some kind of energy out there that was positive, that I feel helped me get to that level of spirituality that I did. Anyway, so after the first few days, this kind of went on. I kind of accepted that they weren't going to hurt me. So I think the 9th day, I was sitting cross-legged on the ground. I was filtering my water through a Sawyer mini filter. I was squeezing the pouch into another bottle to transfer the water, and I hear directly behind me what sounded like some kind of bird, like screeching, and it was so close that I thought it was like a hawk or an eagle dive bombing me. And about 1 or 2 seconds after I hear the screech, I feel 2 thumps on the ground, and whatever it was that thumped, it thumped so hard that I could feel the reverberation under me. And I looked behind my right shoulder, and it was the back hind quarters of some animal darted behind a pine tree, a big pine tree, about 30 steps behind me. So I jump up and I go to the other side of the stand of trees, and there's nothing there. I walk back to where I heard the sound originate from, and there was a hole that was dug. It looked like with hands, and I pretty much realized that there was some kind of animal behind me that had dug a hole, and either realized I was there or tried to scare me away. I didn't really understand it, but that night I for some reason thought that I was in danger, and so I got on my shotgun and I loaded it up, and I was gonna stay up the entire night. So I'm awake. It's around 3 a.m, and I have my shotgun. I have a small pit fire that I made, but I didn't have a fire permit because I didn't go to the ranger office to go pick one up. So I was a little paranoid about someone coming up on me, especially a ranger or something, because I didn't know if rangers go out at night. That was my first time in the forest. So I started to hear footsteps very, very clearly approaching. So I kick out the fire, and the footsteps stop, and I realized that was probably a bad move. So I take out my flashlight. I'm standing up. I'm shining it around, and directly in front of me, I can hear footsteps walking towards me, and they're getting louder, as if something's directly in front of me walking towards me. And this is freaking me out because there's nothing there. I've heard, at this point, I haven't heard every animal in the forest, but I've heard plenty of cows and horses and that kind of stuff, and it was 100% bipedal. It didn't have 4 feet, it had 2. And these were heavy, heavy footfalls. So after that, it gets about maybe 15 yards away and stops. So I'm panning my flashlight back and forth, my shotgun in the other hand, and I'm walking basically up and down my little campsite. And as I'm shining the light, at the end of the beam, about maybe 70, 80 yards away, I see some kind of animal about 12 to 15 feet tall. And I say that because it walked behind a pine tree, a young pine tree, and it was well over halfway tall as this pine tree. It was on two legs. I didn't see its front. It was kind of walking with the side of its back towards me, but I could see the full body of it, and it was pitch black. It took 2 steps behind this tree, and it just disappeared. And I was almost gonna shoot it, but I remember the feeling I got was that whatever I had, which was just slugs, soft-nosed slugs or hollow point slugs, and a double-aught buck, that I wouldn't be able to kill it because that thing was so big. It was, I'd say, 500 maybe to 800 pounds. It was absolutely giant, and it didn't make any noise. I didn't smell anything the entire time I was there. I didn't smell one single thing. After that, after that day, I pretty much was even more relieved, because if they were gonna hurt me, I'm pretty sure they would have already hurt me. So after that, I wasn't as scared as I was, and they would come down to my campsite still every single night. Every single night they would come, and it was the male and the female, and they would speak to each other, and it was crazy. I was scared every single time it happened, but I was pretty confident that they wouldn't harm me, because if they would have harmed me, they would have done it. Let me see what other details I can think of.
Well, let me go back to, I want to talk to you about the sounds that you heard, the vocalizations and the howls and the conversation that you heard them have.
Okay.
How can you describe what you heard for the audience as far as let's start with the howls and then let's move into the vocalizations. Can you sort of give us an example of what it sounded like to you?
So the howls that I heard were more like a, it was a higher pitch, and then at the end of the vocalization, it would drop off in tone to a lower, more manly like. So it would start off high, and then it would end kind of like that.
And when you heard these things, you described what sounded like to you conversation. Have you heard anything like that before or since then? What did the conversation sound like to you?
So before I went out there, I was a huge Bigfoot nerd. I looked up every single piece of audio I could find. I looked up probably hundreds of the reports on BFRO, and I stumbled across the 1969 Ron Moorhead recordings, and the voices that I heard were the exact same voices that were in that audio. It was the exact same thing. So those Ron Moorhead recordings are 100% factual. They are not any way fake, because it was the exact same thing. That whole samurai chatter, everything was exactly the same. And that's when my heart dropped, is when I realized that this wasn't a joke and there wasn't somebody out there with a recorder messing with me, because they knew I had a shotgun, and or they would have known I had a shotgun. But that's how I knew that it wasn't a human and it wasn't anybody just playing a little prank on me.
Yeah, I've had Ron on the show, and we played some of the Sierra sounds, and there's so many different sounds that are included in those tapes. There's some of the higher pitch, there's some of the whoops, there's some of the what's called the rapid fire, the samurai chatter. I'm assuming you've heard all of those. Did any of those vocalizations on the Sierra Sounds that Ron and Alberry recorded, were they more similar than other parts of the recordings as far as the samurai chatter or the rapid fire? Or...
Okay, so one day, I was getting into my shelter. This was in August, so the sun was still out pretty late, and this was my first time, like I told you, going to the mountains of any sort. And I'm from the Bay Area, which is at sea level, and I didn't really take into account the effects of altitude and what it does to the body. So I learned what it does, because this is my very first time I ever went above 1,000 feet, and I had severe elevation effects. My body basically just had a way harder time absorbing the oxygen in the air, and I couldn't do a lot of things. I couldn't walk or hike for more than maybe 100 or 200 yards without getting just completely winded. Every time that I was sitting down and I stood up, I had to stand up as slow as I could, because I would start blacking out whenever I stood up too fast. And this basically hindered me from doing any hiking at all, because of how much it affected me. I realized I wouldn't even be able to leave this campsite that I was at because of how much I was affected by the elevation and the thinness of the air up there. I think I was at 6,000 feet is where Kennedy Meadows is, I'm pretty sure, around 6,000 feet. And yeah, I had never experienced anything like that, and it was really intense for me. So the sound, one day I was a little tireder than usual, because I think I stayed up late because they were talking, and it particularly scared me one night. So every night before I went to sleep, I would do a perimeter check around my entire campsite just to make sure there wasn't anything there. It'd always be with my shotgun in hand. So it was about, I'd say, 7 o'clock, still completely light out, and I decided to go into my very hastily made shelter, which was just 2 sticks crossed together and then one down the middle, and a tarp threw over it. So it wasn't anything special at all. So as I'm crawling into my shelter, after doing this perimeter check, I hear no more than 50 feet outside of my shelter an extremely deep voice, and the vocalization that I heard then, it was the sound on one of the Sierra sounds, and I forget what it was called, but the Sierra sound itself was the one where it starts off kind of rapid fire aggressive, like that one. And the very first second of that clip, before it goes all crazy, the sound was the exact same sound that I heard. And this was while I was crawling into my shelter. My legs were still sticking out. So basically, I thought it was going to drag me out of my freaking shelter, and basically scrambled in there as quick as I could and got out my gun from my gun case. And most of the nights I would just lay there with my shotgun across my chest, loaded with one in the chamber, my finger on the trigger. And that was how I slept most nights, with my shotgun in my hand, my 12 gauge.
Yeah, I can't say that I blame you for that, man. So you were out there. We're like day 9 at this point. What happens next? How much longer were you out there, and what other interactions did you have with these things? So
I was out there for 5 weeks total. And like I told you, within the first few days, I was regretting going out there. And there was the Kennedy Meadows Resort just a few miles away from where I was camped. And I would go down there every few days, trying to get out of there. There was the place Kennedy Meadows. If anybody hasn't been, it's about 15 or 20 cabins, and there's a general store, and connecting to the general store, there's a restaurant and bar, and then just outside of that building, there's an actual bar. There's horse stables, and this is a very old location. This is a place where people would go in the late 1800s to resupply through the Sierras on their hikes west and their travels. And they still to this day they do what's called mule packs, where you can hire a few people, a few cowboys, to take you into the woods as deep as you can, and you can either get taken into there just and dropped off, or you can pay a little more money and they'll stay with you for a week deep in the wilderness, and they'll take you to all the fishing spots, and they'll pack on some mules with a few hundred pounds of supplies and make sure you have a good time. So this is a very, very old location with a lot of history and a lot of people that have traveled there. So every few days I would go back there, and I got friendly with the people that worked there, and I would ask them if anybody was leaving back to the Bay Area, and they would always check for me to look at the check-ins, because the check-in at the front desk, they would have people's names and where they were from and where they were going, just for whatever historical purposes. And so they would be kind enough to let me know if there was anybody going back to the Bay Area, and when they would come to check out, they would let me know if I could get a ride with them. And of course, no luck. So I would just go back to my campsite every night. Let me try to think of anything else in this set of experiences that I'm missing. It was mostly just the vocalizations. Oh, one other thing. It rained, I think, for two or 3 days. It only rained for 2 or 3 days when I was up there. And while I was inside of my tarp, you know how loud it is when heavy rain goes on a tarp. Since it's plastic, it makes kind of a loud sound. So as I'm in my tarp with the rain kind of loudly falling on my tarp, these creatures, they would come up to my tarp, and they would break sticks so close to me that I could feel the vibration of the stick breaking on my head, which means that they were no more than about 2 feet away from me. They were breaking these sticks, and they weren't particularly large sticks, but they were big enough to where I could clearly hear them being broken through the sound of the rain on the tarp, and I could feel the vibration from the stick being broken on my head. That's how close they were.
So outside of the one time that you got to see basically the back of this large, like 12-foot tall creature, did you have any other sightings while you were out there?
I never saw it. That was the only time that I saw it, was that day when I heard the screech, the 2 pounds, and when I looked over my shoulder, it was something that was very, very fast. It was at that part, it was only a few feet off of the ground, and it looked like it could have been a bear. But when I got over to saw the digging marks, and I rushed over to the other clearing of the trees, and there was absolutely nothing there. That's when I realized it was probably on four legs at the time. Or I didn't get a really good view of it. But the second time was in the same 24-hour period. That was 3 o'clock in the morning, the same night, and I got a 100% clear view of it. Like I said, it wasn't facing towards me. Its back and its side was facing towards me, and it took 2 steps behind a tree. But after that, I never saw it again. That was the only time that I saw it.
Did you get the impression that that was the male?
Yes, I did. I did get the impression it was the male.
Okay. After that incident ended, obviously you made it out of the woods because we're talking now, so which is a good thing. What was the next encounter that you had with these things?
So yeah, just to end that story, let you guys know how I got out. So, as I said, I was I gave my life over to Jesus and had that out of body experience. So every day that I was trying to get out of there, I wasn't in my heart too confident about it. And in the Bible it says somewhere, if you're gonna want something and wish for something, you have to wish for it with all your heart. I think it was James, I think like third or fourth verse in James. The man's mind is, don't let your mind be tossed by the sea. A man who doesn't have his mind set straight deserves nothing. So this was September 23rd was the day that I got out, and that day I woke up and I told God, I said, I'm gonna, with all my heart and know with 100% confidence, I'm gonna put my trust in you to get me out today. And every day before this, I would kind of doubt God that he had the ability to get me out. So this day I wake up, and with every ounce of strength in me, I say, I put all of my trust in you, God, for you to get me out that day. And I walk up to the Kennedy Meadows Resort, and this lady, her name was Laura. She has some kind of pet cleaning company in, I think, Sonora. And I start talking to her, and I just tell her my situation, and come to find out she's a born-again Christian too, that had kind of a rough life. And she says a few prayers for me, and she says, you know what, John, if you're here tomorrow, when I leave, I'm going to get you out of here. And I say, no way. Okay. Well, okay, if you can do it, do it. So meet her up the next day. She pays $300 for a taxi for me to drive me from Kennedy Meadows Resort all the way back to Berkeley. And that's how I got out of there.
Wow, it's a good thing you ran into her. So
yeah.
Before we close that out, I have to ask, and we didn't talk about this before we started the interview, but I know when I had Ron Moorhead on the show, he talked about some of the stranger things that they experienced up at the Sierra camp over the years that they've been back. Did you see anything else that was strange while you were out there? I mean, you were out there for like 5 weeks. Did you see any strange lights, orbs, or any other paranormal things while you were out there?
So the next encounter does contain some of those, which we'll definitely talk about. Let me think if there was anything of that nature out there. I might have seen one or two UFOs besides the whole Bigfoot thing. I don't, off the top of my head, if I remember anything, I'll let you know. But off the top of my head, I don't think I saw anything.
Okay. Well, let's just walk into the next set of encounters then.
Okay. So next set of encounters, let's see. The next one was in the Immigrant Wilderness too. And this was 3 years later when I was 23. So 2018. This time I was staying with a friend, and I'd been staying there for a while, and he basically started acting kind of funny, and me and my friend realized that he started displaying some schizophrenic tendencies, and I decided that I didn't want to stay there anymore. So the other friend that I went with up there, who drove me up there, we were very, very good friends. And this was July 3rd, 2018 that we got up there. And the plan was for him to stay with me for a few days up there, and then either me walk him back or he walk himself back. During this time, I was really, really into the Missing 411 series, and I started reading and listening to as many podcasts and reports as I could. When I still listen to it. Last night I fell asleep listening to the Missing 411, and so he drives up there. We drive up there in his Corolla, and this time we went to the southern part of Emigrant Wilderness. I think the trailhead we went on was the Powell Lake. That was the first lake I think we went to, was Powell Lake. And we get there, and the first day we're going to sleep, and he says, "Hey man, I don't think I want to stay with you out here. I think I'm going to leave tomorrow." So he gets up and he leaves. So I walk from Powell Lake. I'm trying to remember the best I can these lake names. So from Powell Lake, I walk to Chewing Gum Lake. That was what it was called. And there's a lot of granite, obviously, around this area, a lot of water. And I get to Chewing Gum Lake. And the first night I go to sleep there. This would be another good time to mention a little bit of backstory about me. I've been very sensitive to spirits and entities since I was a child, and I've had many experiences over the years that have had significant effects on my life and how I view the world. So I have dreams. Most of the times these entities will come to me in dreams, and most of the times they're not positive. So I go to sleep, and I leave a small fire going in front of me. And as I'm sleeping, I have a dream that something's very, very wrong. And I'm trying to wedge myself under this log that's behind me because I'm trying to hide from something, but I don't know what I'm trying to hide from. And I wake up, and whenever I wake up, I'm like instantly awake. It doesn't take me a minute to, you can't mess with me when I'm waking up, "Oh, hey John, the chicken's enough," and da-da-da. But so when I wake up, I hear very, very clearly in my ear a whisper, and it says, "Run." And I was a little scared when it happened, but with all my experiences that I've had, I know one thing you don't do is be afraid and let these things scare you. So I didn't run, and I barely gave it any thought. So I spent another night there, and I didn't have any dreams the second night. So after Chewing Gum Lake, I go to, what was the next lake I went to? I can't remember the next lake. I can't remember if I went to Granite Lake or a closer lake, but I only spent a day there, and I had another dream that wasn't very good. And I think this was the fourth day. I get to Deer Lake, and there's a group of young boys there, about maybe 17, 18, and there's three of them, and they're together, and they're hiking around, and they're camped a few hundred yards away from me, and nothing's really happening. So I stay there for 1 or 2 extra days. After that, I go to Emigrant Lake, which is the biggest lake in the Emigrant Wilderness. So I hike up there. I think it's a 7 or 8 mile hike from Deer Lake to Emigrant Lake, and there's a really, really big switchback that you have to climb up. And it took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours because of the amount of gear that I had. This time I brought 2 firearms also, which was just a 22 and a 410 little pack shotgun. So nothing really powerful. I get up to Emigrant Lake, and it's a really amazing lake. All the glacial melt had just melted, and the lake was really, really beautiful. So I decided to camp just a few hundred yards from the lake. I saw a few deer, plenty of squirrels and birds. Very, very beautiful scenery around that area. It's one of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen in my life. So as I'm setting up my camp, the mosquitoes start coming out, and this was early July, so all the mosquitoes were out, and there was so many of them that every time I would kill 20, about 40 more would come. So I decided that there's no way I can stay here because of the amount of mosquitoes that were there. So I look on my map and I decide just to keep moving. The next place, I think the place that I had in my head was actually called Mosquito Lake, and so I start I pack up all my stuff as quick as I can, so these mosquitoes won't eat me alive, and I start walking towards Mosquito Lake, and I get about a mile and a half into the hike up there, and I get this really strange feeling. At this time, it's a little after 7 or 8, but this was in July, and it was pretty much one of the longest days with the most amount of sunlight in the entire year, and it would get dark around 9:30, which was really, really late for it to get dark. So as I'm hiking, I get this feeling. I can't really describe it. It was a really uneasy feeling, and it was kind of like I wouldn't say I was being watched, but it was more of you can't be here, or you're not supposed to be here. And something told me just to keep moving and move as fast as you can. So I started picking up my pace, and for some reason I just started moving as fast and faster, and I got to a few parts I was almost running. I was moving so fast, and I fell down a few times because of how fast I was moving. And as I'm walking up this trail, I start noticing the trees had some very, very unusual branches snapped off, and these branches were only between 10 and 15 feet off of the ground. And the places where these branches were broken were very, very unusual, to say the least. And there was tops of trees snapped off, small trees broken in half and then placed standing up against the broken piece. Just some really bizarre trees being broken. And I didn't have any kind of camera or anything to take pictures with, unfortunately. But yeah, the more I noticed them, the more there was. So I bring out my map, and I'm close to Mosquito Lake, but it's a little bit off the trail, so I just decide to keep going. At this point, it's about 8:30, and the sun was just about to set. So I had about an hour of sunlight, I would say, at the most. So I keep walking. I get to the top of the whatever mountain ridge peak thing, and I start going down into the valley, and I get to a small ankle deep creek or river. It was called either Big Bear or Brown Bear Creek, and it was at an intersection of 3 trails. It was the Kennedy Meadows Resort Trail, Mosquito Lake Trail, and Big Bear or Brown Bear Pass. And there was maybe a little bit deeper than ankle deep small body of water that was running through it, and it was about 10 or 15 feet wide, and I feel a little safe right there. So I get out all of my sleeping supplies, and I go up this little how do you describe it, like a small hill that was about 20 or 30 feet up this little embankment kind of hill thing. And on a flat spot, I get another feeling that something bad was going to happen, kind of like an impending doom feeling. And the feeling was so strong that I got out my solar charger, and I wrote a little note inside of it, and I put it under a few rocks so that if somebody was doing some exploring, and they saw the solar charger, they would pick it up because it was a solar charger. And when they opened it, they would see this note that I wrote because I had a feeling of danger that was so strong. So at this point, it's about 9:30, and the sun's setting and starting to get dark. So I don't even have time to make a shelter or anything. I just take out my sleeping bag and I throw it on the ground, take out my guns, and as soon as it gets dark, I start hearing vocalizations in the creek or in the river next to me. And this thing is only about 20, 30 yards away from me, this body of water. And it's the same couple of Bigfoots. It's the male and the female, and they're in the river splashing around. I can hear them. I can hear them walking against the water and splashing around. And the voice from the voices they were making, it sounded just like a husband coming home from work and making small talk with his wife, like before dinner or something. And these two Bigfoots were just splashing around in the water, like cleaning themselves. And it was a really laid back, chill conversation they were having with each other. It was just like small talk. And so I quickly realized that I was again going to have to stay up all night because there was no way I was going to be able to go to sleep. I have both of my guns loaded up across my chest, and I have 2 fingers in the trigger guard on each of the guns, so that if anything, so the slightest pull of the trigger, they would go off. So as this was happening, which started at 10 o'clock when it got dark, towards the, I think, east, let me think, towards the east, there was a mountain, there was a mountain peak or the peak to some kind of peak of some sorts. And in the sky to the east, there was some kind of light. There was these lights that were in the sky, and they were flashing every color of the rainbow. And this was happening while they were talking. And these lights, for some reason, when I first saw them, I thought there was some kind of party or like a rave or something happening in the woods. But then I realized that I was pretty much in the middle of this wilderness area, and there was absolutely no way that there was anything there. And these lights were very, very bright. And these lights were coming from, it looked like, just over this peak. And whatever these lights were, they were really, really close to this peak. And like I said, they were flashing every color of the rainbow, and it lit up a big part of the sky. And I remember you asked if I saw any lights or anything, and that was pretty much the only thing that I saw at that time, was these lights that were just nonstop. They went on for hours and hours and hours, and they never made any sounds. I never saw any actual crafts or any actual objects. It was just these nonstop, pulsating, blinking, flashing lights that went on the entire night. As I was listening to these things, I had a flashlight, and I thought a few times briefly about sitting up, because I was laying down, right, and you couldn't see from laying down the river. But if you sat up, not even stood up, just kind of sat up, you'd be able to see it if you shined a flashlight. And a few times I thought about shining my flashlight, but then realized that probably wasn't a smart thing to do, and that they would more than likely either take it as a sign of aggression or disrespect, and that was the last thing I wanted to do in that situation. So I spent that entire night from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning praying. I prayed every single second, and that was the longest I ever prayed in my life. I prayed. And each second I prayed, I thanked God for letting me be alive another second. And then when those few seconds were up, I thanked him again. And I went through all the different emotions of near-death experience, which anybody that's almost died goes through. You know, the regret and then the sadness and then the acceptance. And there's like, you know, that classic range of emotions everybody goes through when they're in a situation where they think they're going to die. And at the end of it, I just, you know, ask God to, you know, forgive me for everything I've done, all the people I've hurt, all the bad decisions I've made, and just accepted that, you know, it was up to God at that point whether he was going to let me live or die. So I stayed up the entire night, and when dawn breaks around 5:30 or 6, the voices, they stop as soon as the light comes out. And I gave it about 30-45 minutes of silence before I actually got up and got out of there. So I hiked from about 6:30 in the morning. I hiked from that place, which was convergence of 3 trails. I hiked from there all the way back to Kennedy Meadows, which was where I was going to try to get another ride out of there. So I get back to there, and nobody recognizes me from a few years prior, except for one lady, and she was kind of cool about it. And there were some Pacific Crest Trail hikers that were there, and I kind of just hung out. I had a little bit of money, so I kind of just hung out around the resort for a few days. And at night there was a walk-in campsite that if nobody was at, and you got in there after 10 o'clock, you could technically sleep there for free, as long as you got out early enough in the morning, around 6 o'clock, that nobody would notice you. So that's what I did for a few nights. I think it was the 4th night. The 4th night, I went. Another part. I hadn't shot off my guns there, and I really wanted, because neither of these guns I had shot off, and I really wanted to test them out. So I shoot off about 15 rounds of my 22 and maybe 3 rounds of my little shotgun that I had. And I go back to the resort, and it's maybe around 11 o'clock. I decide to go try to see if there's nobody at this little walk-in campsite. And I walk up to it, and there's people occupying it. So me not wanting to go into the actual woods too deep because of everything that had happened, I decided to walk down the road the opposite way from the resort, maybe about a half mile, and I was just going to sleep about no more than about 75 yards from the actual road. So I lay down, just pull out my sleeping bag, get in it. I lay down, and I went to sleep rather quickly. And it usually takes me some time to go to sleep. So right as soon as I fall asleep, I'm in this dream. And the dream is me where I'm at in real life, and I'm standing up. And as soon as the dream starts, I get a feeling that, again, something's not right. And I have a flashlight in my hand, and I'm frozen with fear in the dream. And there's something coming up to me kind of from my right side, but I'm not facing completely towards it, and I can't move. And as this thing's coming up to me, I realize that it's definitely a Bigfoot, and I'm frozen with fear. I can't move. And this thing walks right up to me. It gets about 2 inches from my ear, and it starts talking. And when I say talking, I don't mean the regular Bigfoot language that I was that everybody talks about before. This was an extremely clear Native American dialect that it was speaking, and it was talking about an inch or two from my ear. And I have a little bit of Blackfoot Native American in me. I don't know if that plays a part in all this, but it started speaking to me in a human language. And I didn't know anything that it was saying, but the message I got was pretty clear. It was, get out right now. You are not welcome here. You better leave right now. And at the peak of the scariness of the dream, I wake up instantly and I say out loud, okay, I'm leaving, okay, all right. So I pack all my stuff up as fast as I can. And I walk back to the resort, and I think it was like a Saturday or a Friday, and it was about 1:00 in the morning, and there was a lot of people still awake, which I didn't expect. It's a resort. People go there, to party, have a little vacation, have a good time, drinking, smoking, whatever. So I walked to the side of the river, and there was a few picnic benches you could sit at and fish, do whatever. And at this point, it's getting close to 2 a.m. So I decide I'm probably just gonna sleep on this little picnic bench, only a few feet from the actual river. And as I'm sitting there, I keep hearing things just across the river, because the river is kind of loud. I can't really make out what I'm hearing, but it's some sticks breaking, a few vocalizations, but I can't 100% discern exactly what it is because of the sound of the river was kind of loud. So as I'm sitting there, I think because of this dream I had just had, I kind of felt threatened and unwanted. And this thought went through my head that, these things can come across that water and snatch you up and bring you right back across, and nobody would ever notice. So I decided not to sleep there. And this was about 2 a.m. And I didn't know this, but there was generators that powered all of the electricity up there. And at 2 a.m, they all shut off. And there was just a little bit of light that kind of lit up the area. And when those generators went off, the entire place went pitch black dark. And I didn't feel safe next to the river, so I walked back to the actual resort, and it's so dark that I actually walked almost into a group of kids smoking weed, and I almost bumped into them, and they kind of I didn't say anything, and I was really quiet, so they kind of got freaked out. There was some random person walking up on them, and they kind of just scattered a little bit and went back to their their cabins. Another part to note is that this resort, they had a few dogs that were just dogs that kind of lived around there. All of them were friendly, and the other people that that were vacationing there, a few of them had dogs, and I had stayed there for the past 4 days, so I saw everybody that was there and their animals, and that's important for this next part. So as I'm walking up to the resort, and I realize that there's probably nobody else awake, as it's past 2 a.m. There's benches, picnic benches right outside of the general store restaurant area. So I just decide I'm gonna just put my head down and just sleep on the bench. So about 20 minutes goes by with me just hanging out, chilling on the bench with my head down, and I start hearing across the water more sounds. And because I'm so close in proximity to all these people, I feel really, really safe. And this next part was very, very stupid of me to do. So I started, because of my safety, I started feeling a little confident that there was no way that these Bigfoot beings would do anything or be able to do anything because of how close I was to people. So in my head, not out loud, but pretty much telepathically, I pretty much started talking smack to them. Like, man, you guys can't do anything. I wish you would come across that water. I would just, run up to that cabin right there and just bang on the door like, man, you Bigfoots aren't nothing. You guys couldn't do anything if you tried. And in my head, I just keep saying these things, and it gets a little more angry and a little more mean than that, to say the least. And at pretty much the peak of me smack talking these Bigfoots telepathically, I hear the sound of something walk across the water, and at one particular spot of the river, there's a rapids that's very, very short, and the sound that I heard was something walking against the current of these rapids, and it was so loud that I could hear it from where I was, which was about maybe 50, 75 yards from the river, and I heard 3 steps, and those 3 steps would have been all it would take for that thing to get across that river. And right when I hear that, I realize it had just crossed to my side of the river, and I instantly thought, uh-oh, not good, John. You just really messed up. So a few seconds after that, I hear footsteps walking behind the generator barn where the generators are kept. And a few seconds after that, I hear what I can only describe as a growl mixed with a roar. The Metro Goldwyn lion roar at the beginning of the movies? It sounded like that mixed with a very aggressive bear. And when it growled at me, it shook me, and I jumped up on both of my feet, and I took a few steps backwards, not wanting to really accept that this was actually happening. And it growled a second time, and I walk as quick as I can to the first cabin, and this is about 3 a.m. while everybody's on vacation, and I start knocking on the door of this random cabin. Nobody answers. I go to the next one. This lady opens her door, maybe about 40, 45-year-old lady, and I'm pretty much borderline hysterical, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's something outside of here, and it's chasing me, and I'm pretty sure it's Bigfoot. And obviously she gave me a real crazy look because I was banging on her door at 3 a.m. and waking her up, and she was way more relaxed about it than I would have expected. And she quickly told me, I don't not believe you. I was mauled by a bear when I was a kid. And she said, you know what, you can stay on my porch for the night. And if anything else happens, you knock on my door, okay? And I didn't expect her to say that. I was pretty happy. So I have 2 flashlights in my hand, and I basically spend the next hour or 2 just panning back and forth with these 2 flashlights. I don't hear much that time. And about 2 hours into it, as I'm panning back and forth with these 2 flashlights, neither of them are particularly strong. I sweep to the left, I sweep to the right, and as I'm turning back to the left, about 30 or 40 feet in front of me is this dog-like creature. And when the light hits it, it was walking towards me, but the second the light hit it, it turned its head quickly away from me. It did a 180 and started walking back the opposite way. And this dog that I saw, this dog-like creature that I saw, it was panther black, pitch black, and there wasn't any dogs at this resort that were that color. I had seen every single dog that was there, and none of the resort dogs were that color. Nobody had a dog that color, and it was a frail, looking dog. Like it was either sick or starved, and it had kind of matted, kind of shaggy, patchy fur. It looked like it was sick, but I couldn't see its face because it had turned away from me. It was basically walking towards me, but the second I shined the light on it, it did a complete 180 and started walking back the other way. And the way that it was walking also creeped me out because it was like a deliberate, slow walk. Like this thing was walking almost as slow as it possibly could. And I think I was the second or third cabin down from the end, and it's walking almost up against the cabins, and I keep shining my light on it, seeing if it'll do anything. And as it gets to the last cabin, it turns the corner, and the second it turns the corner and the tail goes out of sight, I hear the exact growl that I heard just a few hours earlier come from behind the cabin where the dog had just went. And when I heard the growl, it was the exact same growl that I had heard from behind the generator barn. And I expected this dog to run the way it came because it had just, stumbled into a Bigfoot. That dog didn't come out. And either that Bigfoot shapeshifted into that dog-like animal, or that dog-like animal was some kind of pet. I'm not sure. But that dog thing, whatever it was, it had some kind of relationship with that Bigfoot. 100%. I know for a fact. And about maybe 30 or 45 minutes later, without a sound, that dog thing, it comes the way it came. It comes back around the cabin, and it has the exact same deliberate slow gait, and it basically walks. It walks kind of away from me, and I don't see it again. So basically, the morning after that, I heard a few more splashes in the water of the sound of it going back from my side back to the other side. And in my head, I'm thinking this whole time, like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect. Like, I'm so sorry for saying all that about you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just, nonstop apologize to it. And I pretty much let it know that I wouldn't do that again for the whole time I was there. And I was really sorry. And I'm pretty sure it accepted my apology, if you want to say, and it crossed back to the other side of the river which it came from. And that time I heard it walk across the exact same amount of steps that it came over with. It walked back with the same amount of steps. And after that, I didn't hear anything for the rest of the night. So daylight comes, and I'm pretty much fed up with this whole situation. There was a sheriff. There was a whatever Sonora or whatever county I was in, sheriff at the resort, and he had his car there. So in my head, I was thinking, all right, either I'm going to blow the lid on this whole thing and I'm going to tell this cop everything that happened, or I'm going to get out of here, one of the two. And just like last time, I started praying to God, telling him, I believe you can get me out of here. And, just my luck, I walk into the I walk into the main office and I ask the lady there, Joan. Her name was Joan, I think, and or Joanne, and she pulls out the travel log and she's looking through it. She's looking through all the people that are there, and she's like, "Sorry, John, there's nobody going back to the Bay Area." She's like, "You did just miss somebody that lives in Modesto," and she was like, "Yeah, but they just left about an hour ago." Right as soon as she says that, this man walks into the office with his dog, and she goes, "Yeah, sorry, if you if I find anybody else, I'll let you know to get out of here." And he looks at me and he goes, "Where are you going?" And I say, "Man, I need to go back to the Bay. It's a long way away." He goes, "Well, I'm going back to Pleasanton right now. You want to ride?" I kid you not. He says, How about you watch my dog while I take a shower, and once I meet back up with my wife, we'll drive you down there." And that's exactly what he does. He goes in there, he takes a shower, I watch his dog, he comes out, and I hop in the van with him, his wife, and his brother, and he drives me back to Pleasanton to the BART station. And the man's name was, I won't say his last name, but his first name was David. And this man was just incredibly kind, incredibly nice. And that's another way that God blesses me and God helps me out, and he'll give you what you need if you believe in him. So that was the second encounter that I had.
I find it fascinating, the thing with the dog, because I've had somebody on the show in the past that had these things on his property, and it was sort of a habituation site. And he described how he believed or knew that Bigfoot used coyotes to hunt. That the big male Bigfoot, Sasquatch, would have 5 coyotes with them to help them hunt.
It was definitely the size of a coyote.
And I thought that was really fascinating. I'd never heard that before, and it was a little bit out there, but
yeah,
hearing your story, it kind of makes me wonder if maybe Dave was right. So that was the end of that encounter. What have you had other encounters where you had visual sightings or close-up sightings of these things?
Yeah. Okay. So the next set of encounters was on the other side of the state, California. This was on Mount Shasta. I took a little trip up there with my dog. I had an 80-pound brindled pit bull named Domino. Best dog I could have asked for. It's my first dog I ever had. Absolutely beautiful, amazing dog. Loved him to death. And I didn't have a license or anything, but I bought a car with some money I saved up. I got a Lincoln Town car for $1,000 in Pittsburgh, and there was a few things broken on it. The odometer didn't work. None of the windows worked. Some faulty electrical things on it, but I had faith that this car would get me up there. So throw all my supplies in the trunk, throw my guns in the trunk, 50-pound bag of dog food, and I head up there. I drive from Berkeley all the way up to, what's the first place? The first place I went to was Castle Crags State Park, and I went to the at the border of the Castle Crags State Park. There's a trailhead for the Pacific Crest Trail on the northern side of the park. And this trailhead, if you look on the National Forest map, it's called Dog. It's called the Dog, D-O-G trailhead. And at this trailhead, there's an unmarked shooting range where all the locals come and shoot their guns off. It's a really nice place to shoot. So I go down there, and it's really nice scenery, really beautiful. But something tells me to go to Mount Shasta. to the actual mountain itself. So gather everything back up and jump in the car, and we go to the Mount Shasta city, and I get a few last minute supplies. Go to the bakery, get some bread, which is one of the best breads I've ever had in my life. Highly recommend it. And I start heading up the mountain, and I get to McBride Springs, which is the first camp area, and you have to pay for it though, which I didn't know. And I'm pretty broke. I only got about $150 on me, so I got to save as much money as I can. Can't spend it there. So I talked to the camp host, who he didn't really give me a per se weird vibe, but he had a Freemason ring on, which didn't really rub me the right way. And I actually asked him about it. He said it was his father's, and this was the day or two after Father's Day. And he recommends me go up the mountain to a place called Bunny Flat. Bunny Flat is the second to last campsite before you get to the top of Mount Shasta, where the road ends. The next place after that is Panther Meadows. So I get to Bunny Flat, and this was 2 days before the start of summer. So June, somewhere in June or something. And so I get up there, and the snow directly after Bunny Flat, not even a few hundred yards, the snow was impassable. So Bunny Flat was the last place you could go with a car before you had to get out and hike. And there was 6 feet of snow at the time. I think 2017, or this trip was 20. Hold up, this trip was 2019. This was 2019, June of 2019. And so I get up there, and the first night it wasn't too cold, but it was pretty cold. This was my first time going to snow, and this was the first time my dog was in snow too. So we had a really good time running around in the snow. Yeah, it was pretty fun. So the first night, I only hike a few hundred yards down the trail, which you couldn't see the trail because it was all covered by snow. But I walked to where I thought the trail was, and because of the footprints from other people walking by, and I set up a little campfire. Take out my sleeping bag on a patch that doesn't have any snow on it, and it's about 12 o'clock. I had my 12 gauge with me, but I only brought my 410 with me because I was only a throw away from my car, so I don't think I needed it. And there was a lot of people around, so I didn't think anything bad was going to happen. So I finished my dinner, give my dog some food. He's cuddled up next to me, and right before I go to sleep, on the ridge, which you can walk up, I hear a vocalization, and it's very short. It was only a few syllables long. My dog was asleep, so he didn't hear it. But upon hearing that, I didn't feel safe anymore. So I woke my dog up, and I gathered all my stuff up, and we walked back about 12 o'clock at night back to my car, and we slept there for the night. So the next night I walk another few hundred yards the opposite direction over this little hill, and there's a really nice spot to camp that I find. And so I set up my camp there. The first night I'm there, it's a cloudless night. The moon's out. It's kind of shining, and I hear footsteps, kind of stepping on the manzanitas, kind of breaking a few branches, and again, I hear some vocalizations, but they're kind of muffled. They're not very loud. They're not aggressive either. And my dog hears them too. So because they weren't aggressive, I decided I felt safe with my dog, so I slept there for the night. The next night, I slept there too. The fourth night, I knew I probably shouldn't, but I decided to shoot my guns off because I hadn't shot this off. I had a brand new 12 gauge that I had, and I decided to shoot it off. So I go about a mile down from my campsite, and I shoot off maybe about 20 rounds, buckshot, maybe about 20 more rounds of my little 22. And I walk back to the car, same thing, have dinner at my little campsite. And this night, when they came, the vocalizations were aggressive, and I immediately realized that it was because I had shot off my guns. And I realized it was they don't like guns. That's what I, for a fact, realized, is that they do not like guns, and they don't like you shooting off guns in their sacred land either. So after they got aggressive, I decided that it wouldn't be safe for me to sleep outside anymore, and that I'd have to go back to my car when it got dark and sleep in my car. This was I think the fourth day I was there was like the first day of summer, and summer at Bunny Flats, because you couldn't go up any more of the mountain, all the people that were there to hike Mount Shasta parked at Bunny Flat. There was hundreds of cars there, hundreds of cars lined up, which means there was hundreds of people. And it was morning time, and I had a dream. I had this dream that there was this lady. It was actually a friend I had, his girlfriend. She walked up to me, and she put her hand around my throat and started choking me in the dream. And I wake up, and the hand is still on my neck choking me. And I take a breath, and I can feel my airways being constricted, as if somebody or something is choking me, and I can't breathe. So I start panicking for a second, and the feeling of this thing choking me, this is real life, by the way, the feeling of this thing choking me, it doesn't immediately release its grip on my neck. It slowly releases its neck, as if somebody's very, very slowly stopping choking me. And after that, I was, needless to say, very, very freaked out. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. I've had plenty of, demons messing with me, all kinds of spirits, but that was the first time something had physically attacked me in real life. And yeah, I was pretty scared by that. So I think this was a day or two later, there was a man camping pretty much next to where I was camping, and it had gotten dark, and I kind of walked up to the guy because I felt like I had not an obligation, but more of I could just let the guy know what he might, experience. So I introduced myself. How you doing? The guy was really friendly. He was a Mexican guy that had hiked from Baja California all the way up to Mount Shasta, and I think he said he took the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail, and yeah, he was really friendly. And I just let him know. I said, "Hey, man, you might hear some stuff tonight. I had some experiences with Bigfoot. Are you familiar?" And he wasn't very familiar. He said he heard a few stories, and he said, "Well, should I go back to my car? Is it going to mess with me?" And I explained to him that it probably wasn't going to mess with him. It was more angry at me. So he said, "Okay." I was like, "We'll talk more in the morning, man." So meet up with him in the morning. I asked him how his night went. He said it was good. Nothing happened. And we started talking, and we talked for about close to an hour. And the guy was really cool. But my dog would usually be friendly, but something about this guy my dog did not like. That threw up red flags for me. Because, dogs, they got that sixth sense about them. They can tell things. So, some reason my dog really didn't like this guy. And this was a new dog. I had only had him for about maybe a month. So I didn't really know all his tendencies and his personality too well. But, that was something was off about this guy. And he said, well, man, if you're really that scared, you can always camp next to me if you want. You're welcome to sleep in my little campsite. And I was like, you know what, man, I might take you up on that. So I go back to my campsite, which is less than 100 yards away, and it's starting to get dark. And I think that, if I hear any vocalizations or anything aggressive, that I would just go to his campsite. But then I figured I might as well just go to his campsite to save me the trouble of having to pack all my stuff up and go up there. So it's around, maybe 9:30, 10:30, and the guy's just finishing up dinner. And I say, hey, man, going to take you up on that offer. Is it still okay if I, chill over here? He's like, yeah, man, of course, put all your stuff down, man. Just let me know if you need anything. So my dog is acting really, really funny, and he's barking. And he won't let this guy come near him. He's even more excited and and acting strange than earlier. And sometimes when I go to touch him, he would jump and flinch. So this really, really had me on my toes, because he hadn't acted this way the entire time before. So I roll out my sleeping bag, and I lay down. I call my doggy over, and he lays next to me, and we're dozing off to sleep. And as I'm in that little twilight between sleep and consciousness, I hear and feel something run past me, and it ran so fast that you could barely even, it was like I can't even, there's no way anybody could possibly run that fast. The way that the footsteps fell, it was I can't even describe it, but it ran so close to me that I felt just like in the Sierras, how I felt that vibration on the ground when that thing pounded. I felt the same vibration, but this time I was laying on the ground, so my whole entire body absorbed the vibration of whatever ran past me, which was so close, it couldn't have been more than a few feet. And at the exact same time, my dog and me jumped up, and I was sleeping with my flashlight in my hand, and we jumped up so fast that I don't even remember sitting up. Although the next thing I remember is I'm standing up with my flashlight on. I'm looking towards the east. My dog is hysterically barking towards the west, and he's just going crazy. And whatever had ran by us, we both felt and heard. And I was shaking. I was so afraid. And I jumped up so fast that my heart had a little flutter, a little pain in it. So my dog is just hysterically barking, and that's freaking me out. So I calm my dog down. It takes about 10 minutes for me to get him to stop barking, and he's visibly shaken. I think I dropped my flashlight or something, and he jumped about 2 feet off the ground. He was so afraid, and he ran a few yards away from me. I had to call him back, and his eyes were darting back and forth. He was shaking. He was literally shaking, not because it was cold either. He was like frightened. That's all I can say. He was extremely frightened by whatever happened. And we heard I heard just behind this guy's tent the sound of some more footsteps and two separate branches being broken about 15, 30 yards away. There was these sound of these branches breaking, but there was nothing there, and I kept shining my flashlight, and my dog would not look any other way besides the direction of where this thing was coming from. So I know that he, dog's got that better eyesight and senses than us, so I trusted him. So that night I stayed up for about another hour or two, and yeah, we were pretty freaked out by that. I decide I'm going back to the car, and as I'm going back to the car, I actually fall into a rotted out tree thing. I fall about 4 feet into this tree thing and almost shoot myself with my gun because I fell. Climbed out of it. I walked back to the car, and in the morning, we were sleeping in the front seat because I had my Lincoln, my town car, so it was a pretty big front seat, a bench seat, fit 3 people in the front. And so as I'm waking up, I'm just trying to decide what I'm going to do next. I don't feel safe here. Something just ran by us, everything was wrong. Everything was bad. I didn't feel right. It was just a really bad trip. Nothing was going good. I went up there to clear my head and have a good time, and nothing was going right. So I'm just basically sitting in my seat. My dog's awake, and I'm just contemplating what I'm going to do next, where I'm going to go. There's people walking by because, like I said, it's the first few days of summer, and everybody's trying to hike the mountain. So I'd say maybe 200 people walk by in front of our car. My dog doesn't react to any of them until this lady walks by. And when she walks by, she's wearing a very, very tight-fitting nylon jacket with the hood on. And when she walks by my car and her back becomes visible, my dog started barking, growling, and acting the exact same way that he acted the night before. So I'm looking around thinking, what the hell does he see? What is he barking at? And when I look at this lady walking away from me, I realize that the shape of her head is exactly what a Bigfoot head would look like with that jacket on tight around her head. It looked exactly like what a people saying the Bigfoot pictures look like. And at that moment, I realized that he had saw it and he was reacting to what he saw last night because that lady had that jacket on that looked exactly from the back. It looked exactly like a Bigfoot would look. And I thought, holy crap, my dog saw with his eyes that Bigfoot, and he's reacting because he saw the same thing, or what looked like the same thing, Yeah,
I've had people mistake people in the woods and in places that have hoodies on because it does look like that conical sort of shape head. Mm-hmm. So I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah, so that's how I knew for 100% fact that he saw the Bigfoot because, like I said, about 200 people walked by in front of my car, and he was watching them, and he didn't even bat an eye until that lady walked by, and he didn't just bark or growl. He went to that same reaction that he went to last night, almost hysterical. And after that, I think I left a few days later, and I went back to the bay. Let me try to think if there's anything else I'm missing. I think that was it for that round of encounters.
So I know you've had tons of other encounters, and I'm already thinking we're probably going to have to do another show because we can go on about an hour and a half. So
yeah.
Is there another encounter after that where you've had like a visual close-up sighting of these things?
The next round of encounters was at in the same area that I went to last year, 2020, May 8th of 2020. It's pretty much exactly a year ago. I had an encounter at Shasta Lake with some kind of shapeshifter, and that was the only other time I actually saw visibly any kind of other cryptoid animal thing. But no, I haven't seen Bigfoot. The only time I saw it was that time in the Sierras when it was walking away from me. That was the only time.
Well, tell us about the incident with the shapeshifter.
All right, this one's not too long. So the backstory is kind of important sometimes. So I was living with this guy that I've known for years, since I was 17, and I've stayed with him off and on 2 times. And he was recently we recently lost him due to kind of his own choices. He had a kind of rough childhood. Loved him to death. He was kind of the gangster type. He had some problems, like I said, but we had a pretty good bond together. But he was put on some medication and then taken off the medication, and he had a kind of a psychotic break, which resulted in him doing a few things and me not feeling safe and having to leave the area. So I went back up to there's a place in Shasta County called the Heritage Scenic Byway. It's an 8 or 9 mile road that leads up to a trailhead for the Pacific Crest Trail, which is the Parks Creek Trail. And I slept in the Parks Creek Trail bathroom for 11 days, and each night I had something come up every night and like break sticks, very, very big sticks, across my next to the bathroom. And I actually have audio. I have audio of this that I just yesterday transferred from my digital camera and uploaded. And I'll send you the audio if you're interested. But yeah. So after that, I walked down after some. We'll talk about what happened next on the next show. But it's basically I walked down to Weed, the city of Weed, and after that I go to Wairika. Some people help me out, give me my EBT card. I go back to Mount Shasta and I meet up with basically a group of hippies, a bunch of hippies, and I start traveling with them all around the immediate area. And this is about maybe 3 or 4 months into it. We go to Shasta Lake. We're at the North Shore Road of Shasta Lake, and I'm at this campsite, maybe about 5 miles down the road from the North Shore Road. And I'm at this campsite, and we're staying up a little bit late. It's probably about 2 a.m, and I've never had a problem staying up late. I'm a night owl, so nighttime is my time to, hang out. So it's about 2 or 3 a.m, and I say, "Hey guys, I'm gonna hit the hay, gonna go back to my campsite." So I walk down this little. It's about maybe 150 yards away from everybody else. Everybody else is camping more or less in the same area, and I'm camped a little bit of ways. I have this. The only flashlight I have is this little portable charger with a flashlight built into it. So it's a pretty weak beam. As I'm walking up to my campsite, I'm shining the light on the ground just to see where my feet are walking. I don't really look for anything else. There wasn't any animals. There wasn't any bears in the area, and there was a road maybe 75 yards from me that was kind of well trafficked, people going back and forth. As I'm walking up to my campsite, I'm probably 50, 60 feet away. I shine the light up, and I catch the reflection of these two yellow eyes. And these eyes are the biggest eyes I have seen in my entire life. They are the size of, they're a little bit bigger than baseballs, I'd say, or around the size of baseballs, but definitely not smaller than a baseball. These are the biggest pair of eyes, and they're set about maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches apart. And my beam of light catches these eyes, and this thing, the eyes are about 6 feet off of the ground. And I stop in my tracks, and this thing is staring at me, and my heart starts beating a little fast, and I take a deep breath, and I pick up a stick or something, and I kind of throw it at it. It was more of a twig than a stick. And when I shine my light back, it's gone. So I take a few steps, and I shine my light to the right, and about 20, 30 feet to the right, my light catches the reflection of these eyes again, but this time it's about 4 feet off of the ground, and I can see that it starts kind of crouching, whatever this thing is, it starts crouching down. So it goes from about 4 feet to a crouched position of maybe 3 feet, and that's when it blinks. And when it blinks, both of the eyes move independently, and it doesn't blink at the same time. One eye blinks, and the other eye blinked about a half second later. And when it blinked, I could see fur. I could see fur on its brow from the reflection of the eyes, and they were yellow, very, very bright, almost neon yellow, with a slit in the middle, kind of like a cat eye. And I stand there for a few seconds, and I'm getting more and more creeped out as I'm staring at this. And I pick up another stick and kind of throw it at it, but it doesn't even land close to it. And after this, it goes down from 3 feet all the way to the ground, like whatever it was laid down. The only thing I can actually see clearly is these eyes. So these eyes went from 6 feet to 4 feet to all the way on the ground, just maybe 2 or 3 inches from the actual ground itself. And I'm not as scared as I should have been, so I take about 3 or 4 steps towards it. And at this point, I'm really, really close to it. I'm like 20, 25 feet away from it. And I just want to see what this thing is, but my flashlight is so dim that I can't make out anything. The rest of its body, or whatever this thing is dark, really dark. And as I'm walking up to it, something in my head says, "Don't do it." And I stop, and it turns its head away from me, and in the dim light of my of my flashlight, I see this thing kind of, the way it moved was really, really strange. It kind of like slithered, like squirmed up this little hill thing. Like, the way it moved was so weird, man. It was almost snake-like the way it moved. And it basically squirmed up this hill, and I didn't see it again.
Wow. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Some really, really fascinating experiences. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your stories, man. Like I said, we'll definitely have to have you back, because I think you've got a lot more to say, and you've had a lot more experiences. So if you're willing to come back and do another show, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, man, I'm down. I got other experiences besides Bigfoot. I got, demons and UFOs and all types of stuff like that.
Yeah, so like I said, man, we'll have to have you come back, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, cool.
And that's it for tonight's show, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. You can get me at Brian@SasquatchOdyssey.net. Have a great night, and we'll see you guys next week.